as you were striving to get the pain point right, to really kind of dive into what is my ideal client really looking to solve, it wasn't until you got that dialed in that you saw the most growth. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Absolutely. Once you get that, really understand that the depth of the solution to the pain equation, right? I just think the best companies get built in that sort of organic, viral growth sense, because you could see at the beginning it took some time to get 10, and then it took a little time to get 20, but then all of a sudden there's 50, 150, and then then the snowball and the word gets out.
Love it.
And that's where the law of large numbers starts to play.
Hey, welcome back to the show. And today I am super stoked because we are talking with Alex and his company Loma, and I think you're really going to enjoy what he has to say. Alex, tell us who you are and what do you do?
Thanks, Todd. I'm Alex Nocifera. CEO and founder of a company called Loma, stands for local marketing. We have built a platform for multi-unit brands to locally activate their awareness, their voice, their community involvement, their participation in that local area, whatever their products and services are. We help them get the word out on what they do to try to influence and acquire customers.
Love it. It's a great target. And for those of you that don't know what don't know what multi-unit brands are, we're talking like franchises. We're talking about people with multiple locations with employees all over the place. How would you describe that best to someone that wouldn't know what we're talking about, Alex?
Well, just think about the United States has 3.5 million storefronts, right? So the good old commerce done in a store, right? So I know we all think about it, online commerce at this point, but the reality is still 3/4 of all dollars get spent through a physical storefront. Wow. So the company was founded on the principles of a very noisy consumer landscape. You're being inundated with all sorts of impressions.
Right.
You're between phone and devices and TVs, you're ingesting more advertising messages than you ever have before. And then just for a brand with a physical storefront to try to get Todd's attention is not easy, and it's expensive, and it requires more algorithmic, more real-time attribution. It requires some real stuff, and we just felt that tool set hadn't yet been brought to the enterprise on helping them acquire and retain audiences.
Well, and let's face it, most multi-unit location owners really aren't familiar with doing a local marketing push on their own, let alone do it for every one of their brand components.
That's right. I mean, in essence, what you just said is it's really hard to do it for a single store.
Yeah.
And now just imagine having to do it for 300 stores simultaneously. And I would say what you bring up is the key point, is if you had one store, if you operated one store as a brand and you're in, Deer Valley, Utah, right? Well, every nook, cranny, school, neighborhood, everything about that one store.
For sure.
But guess what? By the way, those are the best local marketing tactics, because intimately your community. But now imagine when you own 20 of those, it just gets harder and harder and harder. And I think what brands lose sight of is that local connection to the customers that they have at each individual store. And when you grow up and you all of a sudden have 50 stores, you lose sight of that intimate opportunity to engage and work with those local consumers in that 3 or 5 mile trade area of where you have a storefront. So we're all about local.
100%.
We're all about speaking that local vernacular, that secret handshake on what consumers are up to in that community. Because it is very different. You're in Utah, I'm in Los Angeles. Even within Los Angeles, I live in Venice Beach. It's very different than Santa Monica, our neighboring beach community. And it's very different than Manhattan Beach. Totally. A few miles south. Totally. So you've just got to have that local local touch. And I think that's what our platform does for brands.
Okay, so how does your typical engagement go then? I mean, when you contract with somebody and you start working it, how are you able to then dive into each of those local demographics and adjust the marketing protocol for each one?
Sure. So, Todd, Loma is what we wanted to build was a platform that was sort of agnostic, Switzerland, if you will, in the middle, right? And on one side, you have the brands with stores, the multi-unit sort of enterprise side. And on the other side, you have last mile marketing and media tactics, right? So we sit in the middle,
right?
And we say, all right, here's a brand, say it's a restaurant brand with 50 storefronts. And we say to them, all right, what are your core objectives? You know, the analogy I use is like a 401k for consumers, because in a 401k, the premise is I'm going to take a sliver of my paycheck and I'm going to put it to work, always on investing to grow my wealth over time. And how do they do that? They invest it in a bunch of different indices. They sort of diversify it across a bunch of different ways to invest in Todd's wealth. We're doing the same principles for local marketing. What we're doing is we're taking direct mail. We're taking old school boots on the ground. We're taking calls into businesses to try to influence employees or sell larger ticket items. So we do this diversified attack on these local marketing channels. But remember, Loma's not in the local marketing business. We're just a platform that sort of brings these two together. And then what we do have on our end is we do have analytics that layer in the brand store level performance. So now all of a sudden for 3 months, we've run these different local marketing tactics with these different partners. And then when you overlay it against historical sales, all of a sudden it starts to tell a real story of like, hey, last year we didn't do anything. This year we did these 3 things. We spent $5,000. And guess what? We're showing a 15% year over year differentiated uptick. And all of a sudden you have real truthful evidence that dollars are returning dollars. And that, by the way, is a big gap in these brands, that just real clear cut attributable evidence that money makes money at the local store level. And that is really core to our thesis.
Interesting. I love it. And I know that this is huge demand for anyone, even with 2 or 3 locations. Sometimes it's really hard to gauge, what do I need to say here versus what am I saying there? And connecting with those locals, to your point, even just a beach community apart, it's a different language sometimes. And so your platform then marries the combination of stats, analytics, what's going on. How does that look in the eyes of the multi-unit owner?
Yeah, I mean, our core discipline is based on 3 principles. It's based on frequency, diversification, and context, right? So the frequency, let's hold steady on getting above the noise line in the consumer world, right? So we're gonna come out and start peppering them with different messages, different offers, and it's gonna hold a steady state of frequency. And then we're going to do this across different diversified channels. I'm going to try to hit Todd and his family through their mailbox. I'll try to hit them through Snapchat. I'll try to hit them through Nextdoor. We look at a diversified spectrum to say, hey, we know Todd and his family aren't just on the TV set all day. We know they're zigging and zagging all over the place. They've got kids at school. There's different channels that we're going to have more effectiveness through reaching them. So that's diversification. And then lastly is that local language context, that we're going to speak differently in Deer Valley than we would Park City, that we would Salt Lake, all these different ways. And then the big underlying difference is you take that spend cadence, diversification, frequency, and context, and you overlay it with historical sales and traffic data. And it's really, it's very acute in that it'll tell a story about a single store, but then our software enables the marketing team and the executive team to now say, well, let's look at all our underperforming stores who've been doing this. How is it performing with them? So you could build subset groups and clusters that say, hey, I want to look at just these stores that have been open for under 2 years, how have they performed with running this discipline? So it's
totally.
I think the software we've developed is game changing, revolutionary for this multi-unit cohort because of the attributable evidence. I mean, I think like I've been working with multi-unit brands for a good 20 years. I've even spent time working at a brand. And I would say that the age-old joke I left that experience with was that, you know, they all want to take credit for when a store performs really well. The real estate guy, the operations, marketing. But then when it hits the fan, they all sort of point at each other. And I would tell you the fastest role that goes inside that organization is marketing, because they just have never had any systems to tell the truth. And we're hoping to be the first to really help them understand how their money returns money.
I am so glad you're here. And I just wanted to take a few seconds to tell you about a program that we have assembled with a lot of our podcast guests and a lot of people who are listening to the show who are feeling the same way that they do. There's a recurring theme. You'll hear a lot of these founders talk about, I couldn't have done it without my team. I couldn't have done it without a support group of peers. I couldn't have done it without having someone to talk to that understood my feeling of isolation as an operator of my business. You see, you're not alone. It is hard running a business, and it's even harder when you know you can't express all your deepest concerns and frustrations with your executive team. It makes them nervous. It gets them scared. You don't want scared people on your executive team. So where do you turn? The Captain's Council is where you turn. The Captain's Council, it is an organization that we are put together with podcast guests, as well as people who are listening who are in the same boat. You see, peers are the only ones that can give you the type of empathy, the type of advice that only a founder or operator know and understand. Go check it out at captainscouncil.com. I know you're going to love what you see there. We have put together an organizational structure that has small group settings, a global community of founders and operators, as well as monthly and quarterly in-person events. You're going to love what you see there. I can't wait for you to check it out and enjoy the rest of this episode. I love it. I love it. That's awesome. So as we look at now that we have a really good picture of what Loma does and how you do it and the tool that you've kind of built to make it all visually appear so you can say, aha, that's what we've been doing. And here's where we need to double down. Looking back on your own growth and in your own business, is there a key decision that you can look back on and say, okay, once we decided to do this, our growth really started to take off at Loma?
Yeah, this is my fourth venture capital backed company where I've been the founding CEO. And I would say
awesome.
I operate under the sort of the principles of inside and out, right? So the inside out mentality is we're going to focus on a problem. We're going to put everything in all our attention into this constituent. And in this case, it's a multi-unit marketer. And the inside out mentality here is that we're going to go deliver value and focus on value, right? And then once we get the value right. And by that, you'll start to see a logo show up and then another logo and then another logo. And then more importantly, we're going to see those logos growing within each of those customer bases. So, you know, I never want to get ahead of that, because then I don't think you've gotten the value prioritization sequence right? You've got to get the value right.
Totally.
And then, you know, the term, you know, most people talk about is product market fit. Once value has really resonated within the market, then you have that sort of product market fit. And then, you know, the playbook that I've been writing for the last, you know, really truly 20 years is that, you know, we sort of go top down, and top down means we're working with a lot of different private equity funds that own a lot of these multi-unit brands. We work our way into the C-suite of these brands, because again, our story here is about get this right, sales go up 5 to 15 points. It's about local awareness. Awareness drives door swings drives dollars, right? So it's really that sequence. And you know, by doing that, we have some of the traditional playbook pages. We have some SDRs that help us try to get meetings with certain brands. I got to say, it's just, I find myself confused sometimes because one of our co-founders, Brett Campbell, is someone who was just at Tropical Smoothie. He was the head of field marketing at Tropical Smoothie. Right. And I'm always going to Brett and like, how many emails a day were you getting from vendors like Loma, right? And he goes, too many.
Totally.
And how do you open them? What was deciding on what emails do you open or not? And he goes, it's that value prop. If the value prop hits a note, and you know how it goes. I mean, you come out of a meeting and you say, all right, were they just in on that meeting? They heard, did they hear what we were talking about? And they say, how to lift sales at the store level. And here comes Loma saying, hey, we've got an apparatus and a platform that drives sales at the store level. And I think it's just, again, I want to stress, it's an inside out mentality. I think early stage companies get ahead of themselves where they try to apply some scale playbook before they've even got product market fit. Right. And you just can't, it's never going to work. You might jump real quick, but you'll fall even quicker. And that is a little bit of the problem I see.
So tell me about that. I mean, as you were striving to get the pain point right, to really kind of dive into what is my ideal client really looking to solve, it wasn't until you got that dialed in that you saw the most growth. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Absolutely. Once you get that, really understand that the depth of the solution to the pain equation, right? I just think the best companies get built in that sort of organic, viral growth sense, because you could see at the beginning, it took some time to get 10, and then it took a little time to get 20, but then all of a sudden there's 50, 150, and then then the snowball and the word gets out.
Love it.
And that's where the law of large numbers starts to play.
I love it. There's a lot to be said here. And for those of you listening who are really trying to nail down that ICP, nail down the pain points, I can't tell you enough how much I agree with Alex here that it isn't until you really understand the pain of the consumer that you want to service and how do you message that to them in the way that they'll look at that email with the 1 in 1,000 emails they just got and say, these guys get me. How do they know this is what our biggest concern was right now? And I think that that's a huge deal. Alex, how did you do that? Was it you? Was it your team? Were you just collaborating and saying, dude, what is it we're doing? How did you come to the resolution of this is the pain we want to solve?
Yeah, I feel like that's another deep dive question in that, I think when you zoom out, and again, I'm on second decade of building companies. When I first started companies, the barrier was pretty high. For you to start a company, there wasn't AWS, there weren't these cloud tools. Right. It was a meaningful investment. But why I felt like in a weird way that helped me as a first-time entrepreneur was because I went all in on a problem. And my first company was building a TV network for retail, multi-unit retail. So where you'd go inside the store and it would be a TV program that was totally localized to where that store was. And, as I've gotten to know this constituent more and more, on company number 4, I feel like we're coming in with real deep insider knowledge of this pain point. And again, by me grabbing Brett as a co-founder, someone who spent 30 years with Papa John's and Tropical Smoothie and Honey Baked Ham. I mean, he's lived and breathed the multi-unit marketing problem for 30 years. So we're just not a normal little garage band startup in that we just cobbled together a quick idea and went to market with it. Brett and I were talking about this for, in essence, years prior to doing Loma. And I think though, really truly, and I've watched this happen with Loma in its first year of doing business, we have a number of teammates that have had no time in the multi-unit landscape. Yeah. But you know what? They're product builders. They're operators. They're smart. They take some of the new tools that they experience with other industries and they say, well, what about if we applied it here? So I do think you get the talent and team effect that contributes to that build and that product that you go and that eventually becomes product market fit. I'll tell you a great example. Hope Lossing, she does come from multi-unit. She's customer success manager, or she's the lead. She's the lead at Loma who heads up our customer success and relationships with our customers. And she, when we were building our new platform that we're releasing this month, she contributed to an idea that I feel like is going to be a headliner feature in this new platform.
Right.
And that's the fact the team has their fingerprints all over every feature function of this product that we take to market is, to me, it's hard to say take your time, because I know time is sort of every entrepreneur's enemy. But the reality is not everything happens really fast. Sometimes, features and different ideas, and sometimes you got to give a product away to get a customer to start to use it.
Totally.
And that's where all of a sudden you figure out, oh, this feature is useless, but really we should do this. And so I don't know, Todd, that was a long-winded answer, but I just feel like teams really give you the best.
No, I love it. No, this is a great conversation, because truthfully, for those the people that are listening right now and trying to understand their growth journey, Alex is outlining the perfect formula of how to nail down your ICP, how to utilize your team to nail that down, how to come up with the right messaging, how to deliver the product in a way that they know that they need it, and you can deliver it. All those things in culmination make for an awesome step out of launch mode into more of a growth stage business that everyone needs to be thinking about. How do you nail that? How do you do it? Alex just explained exactly how they did it, and I love how he put that into words. Alex, nothing goes perfectly in growing and scaling a business. What were some surprises that you've hit that kind of caught you off guard or just were uncomfortable as you tried to work through them?
Wow. I mean, yeah, the list is long, right? I mean, it's like it never it's the most nonlinear, predictable journey, right? And you have these different dimensions of the journey. I mean, I would say we've had investor not wire money on time. We've had, customers who we thought were going to scale immediately, unfortunately get terminated on their end. So it sort of disconnects the whole champion growth element of an early adopter customer, which takes the wind out of some sales for sure. We've had the macro landscape market, the macro economy, not be the most sort of like roaring, tide rising kind of growth assistant here, We've had, employees be the wrong fit. I feel like any company that can last a few years is a milestone of itself, right? I mean, you've just the first few years. I mean, it's no different than a little animal in the wild. It ain't easy, man, right? So, I would say, for those first time entrepreneurs, get ready for that ride. I mean, it's definitely, I'm sure they've read enough to know it's not for the weak, for sure. No
doubt about it.
But you know what? When you get the fruits of new customers, when you get the fruits of a great employee, when you get the fruits of a new feature, all those things are worth it. They make it worth it, right?
Let me grab onto one of those things that you said, because I really feel like guys like you and I who have experienced the ups and downs of growth and scaling, there are some insights that I'd love to hear from you. And that is the people part. You mentioned having people in the wrong seats. You mentioned people that just weren't performing right. What is your protocol, and how do you deal with employees that just aren't doing what you outlined for them to do? How do you outline for them to do what you want them to do? Like, what does that process look like for you in your growth journey?
To me, it's for sure the hardest dimension of this whole journey, right?
Yeah.
Is because they're humans. And I think I've always been very sort of protective of the culture that you go and build, because to your point, every phase is a bit of a different culture. You're like right now with Loma, we're still in the first, year and a half since we formed the team. So we're still, to me, in a develop and learn culture, and, trying to really feel out what features really are sticking, and, all those things.
Right.
But to your point, when you're hitting the gas, trying to get it from 1 million of ARR to 10 million in ARR, then, you're putting different sort of talent contributors into that sort of culture. And I definitely know the most most disruptive at times is sales, because you bring in a sort of a meat-eating culture of like, we got to get money at all costs. And, it's not easy. I mean, it's not easy to take the people that we're developing and they're very sort of protective and a little bit territorial of this baby that they created.
Right.
And how dare you go give away the setup fee to get this guy? Yeah, I mean, all
totally.
this. It's not easy. I think, look, in just general principles of good relationships, comms, setting the right expectation, plans, alignment of expectations is the real key. Let's talk about that first group of people that are part of that sort of early stage build. Equity plays a big role in this, right? Equity and stock play a big role. And so everyone's sort of aligned on a mission that we want to make this entity of ours worth something. So that equity compensation element, and if there's an alignment there, then it's pretty easy when you add more sales and revenue generating talent to that organization to say, hey, understand they're here to get us valued at a higher, we have, in order for us to be a 10 million ARR company, we're going to need to do these things. And you have to understand that's going to be disruptive to the culture that built the 1 million ARR thing. And, good communications, good expectations, good planning, quick responsive course correcting, all those things just require a lot of time, touch. I think, Todd, what I would say is, I'm sure most people are doing it. I find it to be a very hard component is just everyone being remote these days. Like I was used to having an office where those sort of like cliche water cooler moments where, you could see people's heads go down. You could see people's body language. You can't see that anymore. Everyone puts their good face on when they show up at that team huddle, and so those are things that just make it even harder on us to make sure that the team is glued together. They're, but what I would also stress, good products help cover a lot of problems. Like good, when you build something that really starts to take off, you can mask a lot of stuff, right? So, not always to say that, that's what we're all dreaming about, but like, so that's my answer on how to manage the people part. I mean, I want to very much state though, that's the hardest piece by far for all of us.
It is. And honestly, it sounds like you're more of I have this role I need to fill and you hire to the role, as opposed to I've got this great person, I need to create a role around the person type guy. Am I correct?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I think I live by talent rules, and the way I think of it is just as someone who loves sports and played sports, just find the best athlete first, and they'll now that's early stage. As you're going to the 10 million ARR, then I think you do need more, sort of narrow in on more particular skill sets for the need of that role. But at first, I don't mind some generalists because you need some utility playing. I mean, Brett Campbell, one of our co-founders, started off as sort of a pure marketing, now he's more on the customer growth side because he can empathize and connect so well with these multi-unit customers of ours.
Love it. Fascinating. I love this conversation. I love where this has gone. And honestly, Alex, the last question I love to ask people is, as you've been building and growing this business, is there a group or a person or who have you leaned on to kind of help guide you through this process of the journey in this company?
I would give a big shout out to the two most active investors, Ed Wilson at Impulsum Ventures and Austin and AJ from Sloss and Ventures. And I'm in dialogue with them very frequently. And
I love it.
just having good investment support is so critical. And then just also, I got to give a shout
Yeah.
out. Brett and I, are talking on a daily basis. Having him as a colleague, and kind of just going through the adventure. Shiana Nocifera, she also is a frequent for me on just
Right.
On just going through the daily battle, and that's I think to your point is when you go to war, you need good
I love it.
good teammates on that one.
Amen. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Alex is a wonderful, wonderful example of how to tap into your client avatar and deliver the right product and service they need to really, really boost their business. Alex has an awesome business, and you probably have one too. One of the things that I loved about Alex's story is he had so many people to thank and so many people to lean into that were responsible for his growth in his businesses. Maybe not responsible, but were influential in the decisions that he made, the things that he does. And if you don't have a group of peers that you can go to really guide you along this journey of growth and scaling, you may find yourself in a world of stagnancy, where you're just kind of sitting there doing the same things over and over again without knowing what to do next. I highly recommend one of two things. First, check out our captainscouncil.com. They're a sponsor of this show, and they do such a fantastic job of taking CEOs just like you and plugging them into a peer advisory board of other active CEOs and founders who drive ideas, problem solving, all the things that you kind of need to tap into occasionally. You've got it there in your Captain's Council. Additionally, check out our growth workshops at growthreadiness.com. Take an assessment and see where you fit, and see if you do need some help in some of your growth strategy. Love to help you there. Thanks for being part of this interview, and we will catch you on the next one.